Let me read to you a passage from the 9th chapter of St. Mark's Gospel, verses 2 to 10. It's the Gospel for the Feast of the Transfiguration of the Lord, Year B, on August the 6th. St. Mark writes, "After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James and John, and led them up a high mountain where they were all alone. There he was transfigured before them. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Peter said to Jesus, 'Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah.' He did not know what to say. They were so frightened. Then a cloud appeared and enveloped them, and a voice came from the cloud, 'This is my Son, whom I love. Listen to him.' Suddenly, when they looked round, they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus gave them orders not to tell anyone what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. They kept the matter to themselves, discussing what rising from the dead meant." That's from Mark chapter 9, verses 2 to 10. What does it suggest to us? Well, one of the many advantages of a broad education is that one is able thereby to put a thing in a wider context and notice its significance. For instance, if you have studied Shakespeare and appreciate his dramatic genius, you are in a better position to judge the significance of an ordinary work of drama. Or again, if you are familiar with the history of philosophy, you are in a better position to judge the significance of philosophical positions that are evident in everyday conversation and life. Or again, if you are familiar with the religions of the world and their histories, you are in a better position to judge a claim that, say, the founder of a particular religion is a true and even the supreme prophet of God. Well, let us take our gospel scene today that I read earlier and attempt to put it into a broader context. Jesus takes with him the 3 whom years later St. Paul will call the pillars of the infant church, and he leads them up a high mountain where they were all alone, and there he was transfigured before them. Surely one is immediately reminded of that great event many centuries before, when Moses went up the mountain of Sinai and was granted an encounter with Yahweh God. The people were left below, and Moses went up alone. Jesus goes up not alone, but with him those who represent the church he was about to establish on his new covenant. Moses returned with a veil covering his face, for it glowed because of the encounter. Christ's whole person is transfigured. Our gospel today from Mark speaks of his clothes becoming so white that it dazzled. One thinks of the sun. St. Matthew, in his gospel, chapter 17, verse 2, tells us that his very face shone like the sun. And St. Luke informs us that this happened while Christ was praying, and that the appearance of his face changed. Chapter 9, verse 29. His face then displayed a special glory. No other figure of the Old Testament was suddenly seen by key witnesses to be shown in a glory comparable to this. What other figure in the history of religion was transfigured in similar fashion? Muhammad? Buddha? Obviously not. For the witnesses of this, it was absolutely unforgettable. In the second letter of St. Peter, of some decades later, the inspired author refers to this event. Chapter 1, verses 17 to 18. The event had passed into the consciousness of the infant church. Christ, we read, received from God the Father honor and glory on this occasion. We read that there came to him such a voice from the magnificent glory, and the voice declared, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." The witnesses to this, the letter states, were witnesses to the very majesty of our Lord Jesus Christ. It was his majesty that they saw being revealed. For all the drama and spectacle of the theophany of Mount Sinai, some 1200 years before, Moses himself was not its focus. Yahweh God and his commandments were its focus. But here, in our gospel passage today, Jesus Christ is its focus. And there is more. The divine voice points to him as the very Son of God. "This is my Son whom I love." It is his majesty that the disciples witness. The voice from the cloud instructs all to listen to him. He is the teacher of God, to whom the world must listen. Moreover, the greatest figures of the Old Testament appear before him on this occasion, talking of his passing that he will soon accomplish. Moses and Elijah, Moses representing the divine law received on Sinai, and Elijah representing the prophetic tradition, both appear showing forth the central position occupied by Jesus Christ in the entire plan of God for the world. Jesus Christ, the marvel of mankind. Jesus Christ, the gift of God to the world. And yet, then we see him returned to his human simplicity in all his gracious ordinariness. We read, "Suddenly, when they looked round, they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus." Christ now had the greatest of works to do. It was to die for the salvation of the world. No one in all of history presumed to have such a mission as this. Christ was born in order to lay down his life, in order that the entire world would have the means of being free, free of its inexorable burden of sin. He was the Lamb through whom victory would come. Let us place ourselves in this scene among those privileged disciples and gaze on this wondrous man, our Lord Jesus Christ. He is the Son of the Father who now speaks. "This is my Son whom I love. Listen to him." Let us listen to him then, listening as one who intends to obey. "If you love me," our Lord said, "you will keep my commandments." Let us turn to Mary, his mother, and listen again to her instruction to the steward at the wedding feast of Cana. Do whatever he tells you. What more could please the Father than if we listen to Jesus and do whatever he tells us?